Hello and welcome back to the Pregnancy and Postnatal Entrepreneurs Collective podcast. I'm your host, Neve Cassidy, and this is the first episode I'm recording since I got back into my house and I am in my brand new office. If you are watching on YouTube, you can see it's not really quite set up yet, but I'll just give you a little tour. So I have my window here behind me, and at the moment my teddies are on the radiator. I'm going to get some shelves and some nice floral kind of stuff for over there. And there's the door, and then I've just got a pile of mess down there. So that has all my antenatal education stuff in it, all my tech stuff, my printer's on the floor down there. I'm still using my IKEA desk. So I am going to get a built-in desk. It'll be built into this whole corner here, and I'll have a lot more space. So I am really looking forward to the office being properly set up. But that's not what we're here today to talk about. Today, I really want to talk about something that I hear all the time from birth workers. And that is that this feeling, the business side of things, is just so much harder than it should be. And I want to talk about why I think that might be. Not in a, here's a whole load of tips sort of way. More a kind of honest take about what actually is going on, but also some things that we can do to overcome some of the challenges that we might have. And because this is such an important topic, I'm going to be covering a good bit over the next few weeks, and I am working on something to really help you out with this as well. But I wanted to start a conversation here with why are we finding it so hard? So I know for a lot of you, and for me included, the training I did to become a birth worker, in particular for me, my antenatal education training, it was really, really good training to help me get ready for teaching classes, for dealing with the emotional and the communication side of things, and being able to actually support and serve parents and babies. But what most training doesn't do is it doesn't prepare us for running businesses. So what I see happening all the time, and what happened to me too, is you qualify. So you do your training, your dual training, your antenatal training, your universal training, whatever it is. And then you are really excited and you're expecting all this momentum, and you're doing all the things that you've been told to do: social media, website, flyers, linking in with different doctors. But it feels like you're just shouting into the void. And as that happens, that excitement starts to wear off, and it just makes you give way to all these feelings of self-doubt and not being good enough. I know that because I went through it too. When I first qualified, I was cancelling more classes than I was running, or I was doing a one-to-one class for a group price because I only got one couple to sign up and I didn't want to let them down, but I also didn't want to charge them a higher price. And I really did start to wonder, was it me? Was I just not good enough? Or was it that people didn't want what I was offering? Were people just not willing to pay? And I had so many questions that I just couldn't figure out what was going on. And to skip a bit ahead, when I did start figuring it out, when I did start doing well, and then other people, like people who qualified with me and just other people who I was meeting, other birth workers, were asking me advice about how to do the same. But what I was seeing a lot of the time was birth workers who had qualified actually quitting the work. And this came up really really intensely for me recently. I've seen quite a few posts of people who I follow who are saying that they're closing down their businesses. And it's just really sad to see that happen. People who've been renting premises and have decorated them, and then they're shutting down their premises. And even more so, I was talking to a client recently, and she was telling me, and she's not qualified that long, that of the people, the 18 people that she trained with as a postnatal doula, she is the only one that is actually practicing, who's actually working. Everybody else has quit. And she says they've quit because they couldn't get the business off the ground. They feel that nobody wants to hire postnatal doulas here, that there just isn't availability of business. But here's the thing, she's booked out. So the business is definitely there. But what I keep seeing is people paying all this money to do their training, being really, really excited, and then not being able to follow up with anything, not being able to figure out the business end. And it's not for want of trying, but what happens to a lot of people is they're finding that the generic business advice that they're trying to get, that people are seeking out advice to be able to find out how to run a business. But most business advice is built for a completely different type of businesses, and it doesn't account for the things that are really important for us. It doesn't account for the ethical dimension. It doesn't account for the emotional labor that we put in. It doesn't account for the on-call reality that a lot of people do. And it doesn't account for the community dynamic that we are all working in. So if we look at that ethical dimension first, as birth workers, most of us feel really uncomfortable with anything that feels like pushy or manipulative or fear-based marketing, which is a lot of what the advice that we're getting out there is to do. And I know it's a lot of advice that I got, not just from podcasts and stuff like that, but even from business mentors that I was working with through like the local enterprise services. I was told to do things that as an IBCLC, like I just couldn't do ethically, morally within the code. And when I tried to explain that, the mentor was kind of, they didn't get it. They were more like, well, listen, this is a business. What are you going to do? So what can happen is we can either follow the advice that we're being given, and then we start to feel awful or rejected, or actually it doesn't even work for this kind of business anyway, or we don't follow it and we say, well, listen, business advice doesn't work for birth workers. I just have to, on a wing and a prayer, people will just come to me if I put it out there. But that doesn't work either. Then there's the emotional labor involved in the work that we do. Like, we're not selling a product, we're not selling a cup, and we're selling a service and being trusted in one of the most significant times of someone's life. And that has to change everything about how we show up, how we price, and how we market, and how we set our boundaries as well. And none of that is spoken about in business advice that I've come across anyway. Then we have that on-call reality, and not just on-call for birth, which a lot of doulas obviously are, but being on-call for our own families, so that, because a lot of us are the stay-at-home parent as well as running these businesses. So sometimes advice about batching content, and I give that advice for people who can fit it in, who can schedule it in. But sometimes that advice about batching content or creating passive income, it sounds great. But if you're on call for birth and you haven't slept in 3 days, or your kids have been home sick for the last week, these type things just doesn't work for the way that we need to structure and facilitate our businesses and our families. And then when we look at other business advice as well, it often completely eliminates or doesn't talk about the whole community dynamic. Because as birth workers, I know as a lactation consultant and as an antenatal educator myself, I want to support my other birthwork friends. I want to support my doula friends. I want to support, and not just my friends, like anyone in the community who is doing this. I want to be able to support the other lactation consultants, the other antenatal teachers, the doulas, the midwives. But a lot of generic marketing advice is built around competition and making yourself be market dominance and basically putting other people down so that you can seem better. I don't know about you, or I'm pretty sure I do know about you, that's going to make you feel really uncomfortable and not be something that you want to do. When all of that happens and we're looking at all this generic business advice, we can start to think, well, I'm obviously just not cut out for business. Like, running a business isn't for me. But the reality is, not wanting to do all of that standard business advice isn't a weakness, and it doesn't mean that you're not cut out for business. It just means that you want to work within your integrity, which is an absolutely positive thing to do. And the good news is you can do that and have a successful business. So there are 3 really important things that you can do to really sit in this business and feel good about it and actually build it and grow as well at the same time. And the 3 things that we're going to focus on are looking at your clarity over your volume, consistency over perfection, getting support, and how support changes everything, because that is just so important in this community. So let's look at clarity over volume. So most people that I meet and that I talk to who are in this work, they're doing way too many things, but with like no direction of why they might be doing those things. When I meet with clients for the first time, they'll tell me, I'm posting on social media, I've started a podcast, I've leafleted the local area, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. And I'm like, okay, so what is the purpose of said thing? And a lot of people just can't tell me like why they're doing it. So then when that one doesn't work, then they try another one. And then when that one doesn't work, then they add another one. But the shift in doing better isn't always about doing more. It's knowing about what actually matters at the stage of the business that you're at. And a strategy that works really brilliantly at the stabilization stage is going to be completely wrong for somebody in the foundation stage. So if you're just getting started, the things that you need to focus on are completely different to someone who has been doing this like 3 or 4 years. They're mostly booked out, but they just need some different type of changes to make running their business easier. Those strategies are completely different in what you need to do. So having stage relevant advice and information and focus it's really everything, because otherwise you're just on the road to burning. Then the second thing is consistency over perfection, or done is better than perfect. And that is something that I say all the time. The businesses that do well, it's not because they're the flashiest or they're the most polished and their grid looks the best. It's the ones that show up regularly, basically say the same thing over and over again and build trust over time. So focusing on one platform, one message, and repeating it over and over again, that is really way more effective than coming up with new stuff and overloading yourself and your audience with just constantly trying a billion different things. So always try to bring it back to your core message. What is it that you want people to know? And then also, what is it that you want to get out of your visibility strategy as well? And then build some consistency around that. Actually, we have a whole guest training in Your Birthworkers, the membership, on this exact thing about making visibility work for you. So if you're in a membership, do make sure that you check out that training. And then there's support. Just like parenting, you are never meant to do this alone. Running a solo business is actually a really weird thing to do. We're supposed to work in community. So the fact that you're finding it hard, that's not because you're not capable. It's because you're building a business in isolation, which makes every decision harder than it needs to be. Again, I can't stress how much this is like parenting, and that was early parenting. I say to every single parent that I meet that it's hard. Parenting a newborn baby is really hard because we were never supposed to do it alone. We were never supposed to do it even in a 2-adult family. We were supposed to do it in a family with lots of adults and teenagers and older people to give us wisdom and give us practical advice and support. But we don't have that in our families, and when we run our own businesses, we often don't have that either. So we need to create it for ourselves, because having a community and someone to kind of check in with, it really changes how much you get done actually, and also your confidence in getting those things done. So build support around yourself. Don't do your training, spend all that money doing your training, and then quit because you're worried about actually investing in the bit that's going to help you do the work that you want to do. So I feel like I've just been on a bit of a rant here, and it's because I just feel so deeply about this. When that client that I mentioned earlier on told me about how she's the only one working out of 18 people, I was blown away. Even though I knew it was happening, the extent of it really, really got to me. And for people, as I said, to have spent all that money on that training and then to quit because they feel that it's not possible, when it 100% is possible, and maybe support would have got them there, it kind of lights something up in me, and I just had to talk about it. Because I know that birth workers leave this profession not because you stop caring about the families and not because you don't like the work. It's because the business side grinds you down. And that is a huge loss. Losing all those wonderful birth workers who did the training, who had the passion, who had the empathy and the ability to support and hold families, those families are never going to get the support from those wonderful people because they're not doing the work anymore. And the birth workers themselves, they're not going to be filled up and financially resourced from the work that they love doing either. And to me, that is just an absolute tragedy. But remember, you don't have to figure it all out at once. But you do need to know that you're not the only one that finds this hard. And you need to know that there is a way through, and it doesn't require you compromising who you are or your personal or your family life. So if anything in this episode today resonated with you and you're wondering where to even start and what you should do next, I've got a really short quiz on my website called the Birthworkers Quiz. It'll take you about 2 minutes or less. And what it does is it tells you what stage of business that you're in and gives you your best next steps based on that stage. So you're not trying out these strategies that are way ahead of you, or you're not doing the strategies that you did for a long time that are no longer working because you're at a different stage. So the link is in the show notes, or if you go to yourbirthbiz.com/quiz, you'll find it there, and it is a really good place to start. So listen, thank you very much for being here with me today. Always pop over to me on Instagram, send me a DM and let me know what you think. And if you have any ideas for topics that you would like covered on the podcast, always send me a DM to let me know. But I am going to be doing more episodes on these ideas over the next few weeks to make sure that the less birth workers are leaving this industry, because I want you to stay. Thank you very much, and talk to you next week.